Wonderful. So good morning, everybody. My name is Nicola Taylor and I'm the COO here at ScotlandIS. For those of you who don't know who ScotlandIS are, we are the trade body and cluster management organisation for the digital tech sector here in Scotland. A couple of months ago, we recently launched our series of ScotlandIS Tech Tidbits, which take place on the first Tuesday of every month at 11:30. These sessions last 30 minutes and they're designed to educate you on areas that you may not know, that you might want to know more information about, encourage you to innovate with your newfound knowledge, and potentially collaborate with the hosts. So today's session will be more of a kind of Q&A opportunity, and I would ask that any questions you have will be placed in the chat box, and then I can ask them accordingly. So we are delighted to be joined today by Stuart Macdonald from SmartSTEMs for a session that will cover the importance of volunteering and how building a culture of giving back can transform not just the communities you serve, but the businesses themselves. So, without further ado, I will start by asking Stuart to give himself a quick introduction. Stuart, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi everybody, thanks Nicola. My name's Stuart Macdonald. I run a cybersecurity business called CERIC, and in my capacity today I run a charity called SmartSTEMs, which came out of CERIC. It was originally our CSR program, and it was it was something that really brought the staff together, and it kind of grew arms and legs, so it became a charity in its own right in 2016. Having been a programme within our business for about 3 or 4 years before that. So we've been a charity now for just over 8 years. And yeah, I started it because it was something I was very passionate about. I'd been given a couple of breaks in life. I got started up through the Prince's Trust, and I could track back points in my life where people had had a positive impact on me, and I found it very, very rewarding. Not like, oh, I'm a good guy, but actually I've kind of figured out that's how I was wired.
Yeah.
That I actually took real pleasure in it. It was something that there was almost a kind of limitless supply of goodwill to be had from doing these things. And I really loved, a wee bit of a frustrated teacher, I kind of loved the idea of speaking to kids and turning a light on in their head. And young people really are the future, and if we don't help them have a sense of agency and a sense of purpose, then they're going to be doing things that we don't want them to be doing rather than the things that they could be doing and having the best possible life that they're equipped to have.
Yep. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now, I have come armed, obviously, with a number of questions, but we would encourage you to ask any questions that you have in the chat as well for Stuart as the conversation progresses. So to kick things off then, Stuart, how can businesses integrate social impact into their core operations, and why do you think this is essential for sustainable growth?
So there's lots of ways you can do it, and what I would suggest is that for any organisation that's considering putting a programme in place, there's lots of things to think about. What you don't want is something that puts all the labour and the hassle and the sort of grunt work of it onto the staff. So I sometimes see, chief execs or senior management teams being quite progressive and saying, well, we'll give you 3 or 4 days to go and do volunteering every year. But actually the staff sometimes spend 1 or 2 of those days trying to find somewhere they can volunteer and then doing it.
Yeah.
So if you can find somebody who can help you to systemize that within your business and can help fill your dance card so you don't do all the running yourself, so you're willing to do stuff, and that way you can spend the time that your company is kind enough to give you, you can spend it in, with a high degree of efficacy. You can be highly effective in what you do. So, there's a couple of things you need to think about. You need to think about the what and the why. So what is it that you are going to enable your staff to do? Why is it that you've made those choices? And once you've come to grips with those two, and I would hope, given the audience that we've got here, some of them might be aligned to the sort of things that we get up to with a selfish mindset from our side as a charity. It's then about the how. So I would not give anybody a hard time if they chose to write a check to a charity, and lots of companies do. They write a check and they give money to a cancer charity or something else. And I would suggest that writing those kind of checks is a great thing, and please don't stop doing it. But there's other things that you might wish to do, and maybe you could pick something that's aligned to your business. So we picked something I used to allow the staff to do all kinds of everything. And the reason we picked STEM was because I'd read some research talking about a decline generally, not just with among young women as was with the research 10 years ago. There was a decline in the uptake for some of the sciences, and I thought that wasn't a good indicator, and maybe we could do something about it. So we picked that, and suddenly, being a tech business, all the staff got behind it, so they were all interested in it. So we've, without being too scientific about it, we picked something that all the staff were interested in. And actually, if I were a really, really big company, if I wasn't a small tech business in Scotland, if I were a really big business, you're actually helping to grow the sector by promoting digital skills. By doing these things, we're going to create a bigger pool of tech talent. It's going to be a better quality of talent that's out there, and we're more likely to be innovative and create things and just grow the sector generally. Now, for any of us who service any of that sector, we're essentially paying it forward into a bigger sector down the line. So it does make commercial sense to do it. But of course, it also brings people together. We're increasingly doing remote working and hybrid working. So it brings people together in a way that makes sense. They can do a fun activity. And I can tell you, getting in a room with, 10 and 15-year-olds and having a laugh and doing a bit of tech stuff, it's a real dopamine hit, and it's not boring, and they're not so fed up with life as some of our colleagues might be on occasion. So it's just good fun. So once you've decided that's the sort of thing you want to do, you can get involved in doing it, and then it's about making it possible for the staff to do it. So I would say to any employers, have a think about how many days you might want to give them, and then how you might want them to chunk their time. Will they do it in half-day increments or full-day increments? We do a thing with micro-donations where people can sort of give 20 minutes at a time to come and talk on a session to a group of kids to talk about what it's like being a software developer, a software tester, a coder, someone involved in cyber, whatever. And we want to tell those stories, because what we recognise as the problem in Scotland is we've got potential, but that potential doesn't get connected to opportunity. And we talk at SmartSTEMs a lot about poverty. So not poverty in the financial sense, but in the wider definition, poverty can be thought of as a lack of abundance. So if you're a young person and if you happen to not necessarily be a typical learner, and you've had the misfortune of being born in a postcode with maybe not the best schools historically, or you're maybe in a more rural region with less access to industry, and maybe mum and dad aren't particularly technical and there's nobody else in the family, if some of those general things that can help to propel you in one direction rather than another, if nature has gone against you just by the lottery of birth, then what we're trying to do is find ways to act in a way systemically and as a sector to help address those gaps and redress them. So what that means is we get in front of young people and we say, you could do this. Right. And so there's this sense of inspiration. Oh, this is quite interesting. And then aspiration. Perhaps I could do that. And then once you've decided you might be interested in doing that, the next gap that young people have to overcome is, how do I become that thing? And the old proverb goes that if you want to ask how to get somewhere, you ask those on the road back. So by getting people who've already done that thing in front of young folks, we can give them a greater chance. So through that connectedness and increasing the sort of societal thread count of Scotland, if you will, if you think about us as a fabric, we're quite threadbare in some places. And if we can increase that thread count and give people a greater chance of being connected to something, then the chance of them becoming that thing is far greater. Once they're connected to that opportunity, we still have to recognise that young people might be societally disadvantaged. They might not have the social capital. So, if they meet people and they're talking about going on holidays in certain places, or having played tennis or going skiing or doing things, there's still other gaps to be addressed. But we're not working on those gaps. We're working on skills awareness and connections. So if you go to a school and your teacher isn't connected to anyone in industry, they might not be able to signpost for you. So what we do at SmartSTEMs with the businesses that we speak to get back to the technicalities of what you were asking me about there, is we help businesses to connect to the schools in their area and vice versa. So we
Yep.
have a database of all the schools, and if someone says, "Oh, we want to volunteer," we generally find people have a sort of 4-tier priority model to where they wish to volunteer. So they want to do it at this, if they have children, they might wish to volunteer at their children's school. Their second choice will be the school they went to, if it's not been bulldozed like my fantastic school was. And then your next choice would just be somewhere with some element of deprivation. People might go and wish to go and work there. And then the last one is, I'll go wherever you tell me. But there's a clear hierarchy to how people choose to volunteer. So as an organisation, if you can work with the community around you, if you can work with the schools where your staff live and work and deliver your services, then your staff are more likely to be engaged by that. They're more likely to feel like you're interested in them and their families and their communities. And that's just part of good business. It's been a good corporate citizen, if you will.
So we've got a question come into the chat here, Stuart, just around some of the things that you've been talking around. So David Massey from the Apprentice Store, who are a wonderful organisation based up in Inverness, a social enterprise managed service provider. He says here, so I think I heard that they have dealt with the overhead of setting up a charity. And if that was true, why do this rather than engaging with the many employability programs on a voluntary basis that already kind of exist within the area? Or did you feel like that was something that was lacking at the time?
So I've never been an either or person. I feel, Western philosophy, I think, ties itself in knots by getting caught up in this versus that rather than this and that. So that's my worldview. I probably started a little bit frustrated by I was a little bit frustrated by some careers advisors giving kids, everybody had a sort of horror story of my careers advisor said I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that. Over time, I've become far more considerate and sympathetic towards careers advisors, not least of all because I've come to understand how quickly the world moves. So there's that interesting but perhaps unprovable statistic that 50% of jobs in 20 years don't exist today. And that's been knocking around for a while. I don't think there's a problem. There's a systemic issue with any of these agencies or organisations, frankly. I think there's a problem that there's just in that. I don't think they've been engineered to be as successful as they might. So if I give you an example, at SmartSTEMs, I'll batter on a lot about us so NASA invented Velcro because it puts 5 hooks in, and if 4 hooks fall out, you still get a hook in and you still get a connection. Within the school system, so primary schooling is primarily delivered by women of childbearing age, and therefore people go off on maternity leave. They are young people entering the profession generally again in primary teaching, and so they progress, they become managers, they move schools, they maybe have to take care of elderly relatives, and therefore the amount of transient employees is particularly high. What that means is the ability to have long-standing connections with the local business or the local they keep being broken. And that refers to that threadbare thing I'm talking about. So one of the jobs I see that SmartSTEMs exists to deliver is to constantly rethread those connections between industry and education, between tertiary education and industry. We're constantly reforming those connections so that when a young person presents with opportunity, they actually have a chance of being connected to that opportunity. If the brilliant teacher who had 50 industry connections retires the year before you enter the primary school, your opportunities are grossly diminished through no fault of your own or her. She was just quite right to retire at that point. So we want to remove accidents, and to remove accidents, you have to engineer for resilience. So what that means is when we make connections with a school, we make 2 and 3 connections with a school. We don't have one person who's responsible for that school and vice versa. If you might indulge me one more bit, anecdotally, so we're running a loan pool now in Glasgow City Council. And the reason we ran that is we did a bit of work and we found that within the school system in Glasgow. This was a survey of the primary schools. So there's 140 primary schools in Glasgow City Council, for context, and 20% of the schools had some sort of specialised STEM equipment, like a Sphero or Raspberry Pis. 20% of the schools who had it, 30% of that 20% knew how to work it. They had someone who knew how to work the stuff that they had. So the councils invested in equipment. The school had somebody who knew how to work it, and then somebody had the sheer indecency to be off on maternity leave or to be looking after their parents, or just life. And because of these things, you've kind of got dead money. You've got this sunk cost that's not being realised. So I see what we're involved in. I've talked a wee bit about connectedness and reweaving fabrics and all of that sort of flowery chat. The other thing that we do is I see it as a utilisation problem. So how do you turn young people into talented, digitally skilled, compassionate adults who wish to solve the world's problems and make the place better? Well, you need to enable them with skills. You need to teach them there's a way to be kind and to do things with other people. So we can engender a sense of kindness and public spiritedness by introducing adults who are already in the industry. We can make that seem normal. So one of the things I would ask of anybody here is, if you're interested, let's get you involved, and you can show young people that that's what it's all about. Once we're getting you to do stuff, we need to make sure that you're getting access to the right calibre of training, that it's age appropriate, that it fits in with the curriculum, so that we build content and we help companies to profile the specialisms that they have in a way that's age appropriate and ties in with the curriculum for excellence. So, don't just do stuff and do it really well and have a partner that helps you to do that well. And it's not just us. But no, I didn't have a problem with anybody, and we try where we can to signpost and hand over to other agencies as often as possible. So we work with a lot of the DYWs. We work with a lot of councils and colleges, and unless somebody's particularly territorial, we never have any issues.
And I know you obviously work quite closely with us, and as do we with you, with regards to our digital critical friends programme. So
absolutely, excuse me, Nicola, well said.
No problem. So can you, as an organisation, what are some of the challenges that businesses might face in building a culture of kind of giving back, and what are the ways that we can overcome these barriers?
Barriers to giving back. So if you want to be a hearts and minds piece, you will, I would like to think that a lot of you would find yourselves being interested in the sort of work that we do, but the reality is your staff will determine the projects that you're interested in doing. So I would definitely start an open dialogue with your staff. If you don't have elements of flexible working, it might open a wee bit of a can of worms for you. So if you've already got to grips to that one, this will be quite good, because it will fit in with that element of flexible working where they can just take some of their time and do it. So think about what cost you're willing to bear, so you'll know how highly utilised your staff are. Think about what slack you've got. If you recognise that your staff have probably, a fair chunk of your staff have probably got 20 days a year where they're not engaged in heavy output, does it really have any cost to you at all to give them 5 days to do something? That was my thinking when I started it a long time ago. I couldn't see how it was going to cost me anything, and I could only think of a positive upside, excuse me, and that's exactly what it did. So it helped us win the soft end of tenders. So how we did it was, we had an open conversation. I wrote a kind of paper drawing together all the research, said that I was thinking about doing this, asked them if they would be interested in doing it, and we planned a big event. So I already knew that the area of interest that I had was shared by the staff. I asked them what they wanted to do. So how do you wish to volunteer? So frankly, some people will be happy driving people to the hospice. Some people will be happy digging the church garden, etc., etc. If you've got staff who are interested in making sure young people are digitally skilled, then SmartSTEMs is the sort of organisation that can help you with that. We've got literature around, what it means to volunteer. We've got some general guidance. There's good stuff out there, but general guidance on, how you talk to young people. I've had people arrive at events and talk about their circuitous route into their current role. That doesn't really wash with an 8-year-old. You might need to talk about the fact that you did a couple of jobs before you did this job.
Yeah.
So language is important, smiling's important, eye contact, doing what you say you're going to do, not being potty mouthed. There's some of those kind of real basics, Janet and John stuff. But beyond that, it's about filling your dance card and being effective with the time you have. I think all of us, when we get to the end of our journey, want to be able to look back and say, I did what I could with the time that I had. So don't waste it. If your employer's kind enough to give you 10 days or 5 days, use it, and use
Yep.
it spending time with young people, I would suggest.
Brilliant. So what advice then would you give to a business that wants to begin incorporating social impact into its mission, but doesn't know where to start?
So the first step is find a mission that more of the staff are going to get involved in. It's difficult, you've only got 2 bum cheeks, so you can only ride one horse really at the one time. So pick a project and run at that. And if you get that right and you want to introduce another project, brilliant. Go and do something else, but pick something. So let's say, for talking's sake, with my selfish head on, you picked SmartSTEMs. You would be looking at how much time do I want to give? Where do I want to deliver it? So again, the staff might be willing to go and spend one of their days off delivering something in Edinburgh, but if your staff are all living in Glasgow, they'll probably not want to do it there. So just think about some of those problems. Think about the age groups. Think about the audience you've got. So are they going to be better with, think about your team. Are they going to be better with 15-year-old kids, or are they going to be okay with 10-year-old kids? So think about who you're doing it. And then think about, there should be an outcome here for the business. Right? So it's absolutely okay for a business to benefit from doing charitable endeavour. So you should make a record of what you do. If the business is going to incur the cost, albeit a sort of ethereal cost of labour already costed in salaries, if it's going to cost, photograph what you're doing. Make a record. So at SmartSTEMs, if we have an event, we have a photographer come and take pictures, and we supply all those. We make sure we get the relevant permissions, of course, but we make those photographs available for the companies to post on their social media. We help people to go on a journey, which I'll just explain in a moment. But we also make record of the fact that, for example, Acme Limited had 7 staff at these events, and at the end of the year, we produce ESG statistics for people. So if anybody hasn't come across ESG, it's a sort of reboot, environmental and social governance. It's only legislated for PLCs, but it's kind of an update to the CSR. Corporate social responsibility. Where I would suggest that SmartSTEMs kind of excel is around the S. So most companies are great at doing their environmental bit. Even if they're not fantastic at doing it today, they understand the scope of the problem, and they have a plan to redress it. Governance, most companies have a degree of governance, but the social element, what do I do with my staff, and what do we do from a societal impact or society? People, sometimes it's a wee bit harder to wrestle that one. So we at SmartSTEMs have a 5-stage model where we look at companies. So you might have a company that's sort of passively good. So they maybe write a check for the local kids football team or the girls hockey team or whatever. But we would like to move them from being that sort of passive or latently good company into a fully engaged, actively good organisation. And I would suggest what that looks like is that business knows all the local schools in the area and has connections with them. It has connections into all the educational establishments in the area. It may be volunteers in those schools. It starts to look at things like research and development, and it works with colleges and universities to do that. So this sense of connectedness and this sense of real granular involvement, that's so important over and above just being there and working and doing the job and hiring staff. How can you be the best corporate citizen as an organisation Well, if you look after your workforce, fantastic. Be Cadbury's, don't be Amazon. Be Cadbury's, be
Yep.
fully engaged and look after your workforce and look after their hearts and minds and look after their families and the areas that you're in. And the way that you can do that is by engaging with those schools. Just letting a school down the road know that you're available to come
Yeah.
in. You've got staff that are available. That doesn't need to be facilitated to us. We can help you because
Yep.
sometimes the schools don't come back. When we ran our first event, it took on average eight pieces of contact before we got the schools engaged with us. So it can be quite time consuming for businesses,
Yeah. So we've got another kind of comment here. I'm conscious of time, so this is probably the last question we're going to get to, which is
Sorry, I'm a
unfortunate.
gas bag.
No, absolutely not. I think, to be honest, it's such an interesting topic that I think we could talk on it for days, and I'm sure there will be many follow-up questions that come from it as well, Stuart. So don't be surprised if there's lots of introductions that come. But Lissa has popped a comment in here to say, myself and Tori, who is also on the call, work for Stella Ramada. We recently did some school visits with kids who are in senior year but aren't going to uni. And we found that the schools and the careers advisors seemed to be more focused on the young people going to university. Have you found that to be a kind of similar challenge? She then goes on to say quite a lot of the young people mentioned that they don't get a lot of advice on other options, and the schools spend more time with the kids applying to uni. We've been thinking of how can we help to change that, but we've also found that a lot of the schools don't share information with each other, which means we're having to contact each school individually. So a couple of comments in there, and
Aye.
obviously the kind of specific question was around, do you find the same challenge with the schools concentrating on those expressing an interest in university?
So listen, well done in doing that. Hats off. That's what it's all about. You want to change, be the change. So well done. So look, unfortunately, schools are set against one another by league tables. I'm all for
Yeah.
competition and doing well, but it doesn't engender collaborative sharing of best practice. So that's absolutely spot on. There's a reason for that. Some people are just good people and they'll pass on good things anyway, and they won't worry about the fact that you might do better than me. I'll just still be nice about it. So be that kind of person. Um, in terms of, yes, so a lot of teachers were kind of, if you forgive the expression, a lot of teachers were shiny wains themselves. They were quite shiny wains, and so they went to school, and then they went to the big school, and then they became teachers back in school again. So funnily enough, the thing they're good at is telling people how to progress through the school and education system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important that people like yourselves get in and sing other songs. There is, a DYW in Glasgow ran a campaign years ago, and it's kind of grown arms and legs. You've maybe seen it, called No Wrong Path, that
Mm-hmm.
hashtag. And that's a great thing. And we try and tell those stories of, it doesn't matter where you start in life. It's about just making ongoing improvements to step forward. So yes, it is a challenge. Teachers need to be conscious of the fact that not everyone's going to be able to go to university. Not everyone's going to be able to afford going to university, and to be insensitive to that, really, given where we are, is kind of not too cool in my opinion at this
Yeah.
stage. So yes, make yourself available to careers advisors, make yourself available to teachers, and make sure those options are afforded the young people in the communities that you live in and spend your time in.
Yeah, I think I'd just probably add to that with careers advisors do get a bit of a hard time, but they're
Yeah,
dealing
they
with
do.
hundreds of children on a kind of day-to-day basis,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
each of them want different things. So it's difficult to know what is the right path for each of the individuals. But the work that you're doing, Lissa and Tori, there is fantastic, and we do kind of similar things again with our kind of digital critical friends group, because we need to educate people on what all the different options are for them to be able to kind of go on to that next step, and that's how we'll start to address the skill shortage that we face within the sector, is if we capture everybody and all the right pathways for them. That unfortunately brings us to time. It was a very quick 30 minutes. It's passed by very quickly, and like I touched on earlier, I think we've really just scratched the surface with the level of conversation that we could have here. This chat will remain open, so if anybody has any questions that we haven't obviously had the opportunity to ask of Stuart just yet, please do continue to drop them into the chat, and we can pick up with Stuart afterwards. I think it's probably worth maybe doing a little bit of a blog post to sit alongside this once we reshare it again, Stuart, if that would be something that you would be interested in doing.
Happy to do
If
that.
anybody wants to pick up with Stuart further and have a conversation around the great work that SmartSTEMs are doing and just carry on some of this conversation in a little bit more detail, then do reach out to us afterwards and we'll be happy to make that introduction back into Stuart as well. Just a reminder that obviously these sessions take place on the first Tuesday of every month, so there will be another Tech Tidbit taking place the first Tuesday in December at 11:30. So look out on the socials to be able to sign up for that one as well. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time. Like I say, that brings us to the end of today's Tech Tidbit session, and we hope that you can join us again for future sessions. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Nicola.
Stuart.
Thanks for
Much
that.
appreciated.
Cheers.
Thank you.